He set the paper on the supper table like it was nothing more than a bill from the feed store. Thomas didn't reach for it first. He looked at Opal instead, not to ask if the accusation was true, but to see if her hand would shake when she picked it up. It didn't. And in that one still moment, with the lamp burning low between them, Thomas understood something he hadn't let himself say out loud in 4 months of marriage. He hadn't married her for her steady hand with a ledger. He had fallen for a woman the whole world had spent her life teaching him to doubt. Thomas Whitfield wrote his advertisement the same way he kept his account books, plain and without waste. He gave it to Reverend Amos Colby to post through the church circular that reached 3 counties, and he did not soften a single line. Wanted. A wife who can read, write, and keep accounts. No promises beyond a roof, fair treatment, and honest work. He was 33, and he had buried enough of his life waiting on feelings to arrive on their own schedule. His mother had died the winter before, after 4 years of him carrying her meals up the stairs and reading her the almanac by candlelight because her eyes had gone weak. In that time, the cooperage his father built had slid into disorder. Barrels stacked without count, invoices shoved into a nail box, half the customers paying late because nobody chased them for it. Thomas could split a stave true and steam bend a hoop in his sleep. He had never once in his life been able to make a column of numbers sit still and behave. He kept his father's old ledger on the shelf above the workbench, its leather cover cracked pale at the corners, and some nights he opened it just to look at his father's handwriting, small and certain, before his own scrawl took over the pages and the numbers began drifting sideways. The replies came slower than he expected. Most were from widows wanting a fresh start, or young women whose families wanted them settled. One letter stood apart. It was written in a hand so even it looked printed, and it answered his advertisement point by point, the way a man might answer a contract. My name is Opal Reeves. I have kept household accounts and business ledgers for 6 years. I do not require courting. I require an honest arrangement, honestly kept. Thomas read that line 3 times. There was no warmth in it, and no coldness either. Only a kind of care he recognized, because it was the same care he put into his own words. He wrote back within the week, and he told her the truth about the cooperage's tangled books, the way he might have told a hired hand what she was walking into. She wrote again, saying she would come by the first stage in October, and that she preferred to see a problem plainly stated before she agreed to fix it. He read her letters more than the length of them deserved. He told himself it was because he needed to know what kind of woman was coming to live under his roof. He did not yet let himself wonder what her voice might sound like saying those same careful words out loud. Reverend Colby stopped by the cooperage the week the 3rd letter arrived, ostensibly to discuss the church roof, though Thomas suspected the real errand was curiosity. You've settled on the St. Louis woman, then, the Reverend said, turning a barrel stave over in his hands like he meant to buy it. Bold thing, writing back the way she does. Most would soften a letter like that coming from a stranger. I don't want it soft, Thomas said. I want it honest. She's given me nothing but that so far. And if honest isn't the same as easy. Thomas didn't have a ready answer for that, and the Reverend, to his credit, didn't press for one. He only set the stave down and said, before he left, that he'd pray the arrangement suited them both, and that Thomas ought to write her plainly if he changed his mind before she boarded any stage, a kindness owed to any woman crossing 3 states on the strength of a letter. Thomas turned that conversation over more than once in the days that followed, mostly at night, when the ledger's crooked columns had worn out his patience and he sat instead with Opal's letters spread across the table. He noticed things about them he hadn't let himself notice before. That she never asked him a single question about his character, or his looks, or his prospects, only about the work. That she had, in her second letter, corrected an error in his own, arithmetic without being asked, in a tone that assumed he'd want to know rather than feel foolish for having missed it. He found he did want to know. He found, too, that he was starting to picture her voice reading the words back to him, though he had no more than her handwriting to build it from. He wrote his final letter before she was due to travel with more care than he'd given the advertisement itself, though the substance stayed the same, the truth of what waited for her, no more dressed up than before. He signed it Thomas Whitfield, and beneath his name he added a single line he hadn't planned to write until his pen was already moving. I hope the arrangement suits you as well as the ledgers will. It was as close to a hope for something more as he knew how to put on paper. The coach reached Larkspur Hollow a little after noon, and Thomas stood by the depot post, turning his hat in his hands, aware that half the men loafing near the feed store were watching him as closely as they were watching the stage door. He had told himself all morning that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. And he believed it right up until the door opened and a woman stepped down carrying a small trunk and a notebook wrapped tight in oilcloth against the weather. She was not what he had pictured. He had imagined someone worn thin by hard years, grateful for whatever was offered. Opal Reeves stood instead, with her shoulders set and her chin level, and when her eyes found his across the platform, they held there a beat longer than politeness required, taking his measure the same unhurried way he was taking hers. Mr. Whitfield. Her voice matched her letters exactly, even unhurried, giving nothing away for free. Miss Reeves. He stepped forward and put his hand out, the way he'd shake on any deal. Her grip was firm and brief, and she withdrew it a half-second before he was ready to let go, which surprised him more than it should have. "That's all your trunk?" he asked, nodding at its size, smaller than he'd expected for a life being uprooted. "I carry what's useful." She held the oilcloth notebook a little closer against her side as she said it, and Thomas noted the gesture without understanding it yet. He loaded her trunk onto the wagon and offered his hand to help her up. She took it only long enough to steady herself and let go the moment her boot found the wagon floor. The ride out to the cooperage passed mostly in silence, though it was not an uneasy one. She studied the road, the fence lines, the state of the fields they passed, with the frank attention of someone cataloging what she'd need to know. "You said in your letter the books were behind," she said finally. "Behind is generous. They're a mess a man could get lost in." "Then we'll start there tomorrow." Not a question. Thomas found he liked that better than he expected to. When they reached the house, he carried her trunk in first and showed her the room that would be hers. Plain, but swept clean. A fresh quilt on the bed that he'd bought new rather than use one of his mother's. She set the trunk down and looked around without comment, though he thought he saw something ease slightly in her shoulders. Not relief exactly, but the settling of someone bracing for worse and finding the room merely plain. "I keep my own hours in the morning," she said. "I'll want the ledgers by first light." "They'll be waiting." He meant to say something else, some word of welcome, but found the plain exchange suited them both better than anything he might have reached for. He left her to settle in, and on his way back to the barn, he caught himself glancing back at the window once, unsure what he was hoping to see. At supper that evening, The two of them sat across a table meant for more conversation than either offered. Thomas asked after her journey, and she answered plainly. 3 days by rail, one uncomfortable night in a coaching inn, where she'd kept her trunk against the door out of habit rather than any real fear. He asked why the habit, and she only said that a woman traveling alone learned to be careful and let the subject close there. He didn't press it, though he noted the way her hand had gone still around her fork when she said it, and filed the stillness away the same careful way she seemed to file everything. "Your letter said your father built this place," she said, changing the subject herself. "What happened to him?" "Heart gave out 3 years back, working the steam box in August heat. Mother went this past winter. It's been mine alone since, and the books show it." He said it without asking for sympathy, and she didn't offer any beyond a small nod, which he found he preferred to the alternative. "I'll need a full day tomorrow just to see the shape of what you've got," she said. "After that, I can tell you how bad it truly is." "That eager to find out?" "I'd rather know the size of a problem than guess at it." She said it with the faintest edge of dry humor, the first he'd heard from her, and Thomas found himself smiling down at his plate longer than the joke strictly earned. When the meal was done, she rose to help clear the dishes before he could tell her it wasn't required of her, and he let her, understanding somehow that refusing the offer would have cost more than accepting it. They worked the kitchen in a silence that had already, in one day, stopped feeling like the silence of strangers. By first light, Opal was already at the workbench desk, the nail box of invoices dumped out and sorted into piles before Thomas had finished his coffee. He came in expecting to explain the mess to her. Instead, he found she'd already made sense of half of it, matching delivery dates to customer names from nothing but the barrel stamp numbers burned into the receipts. "You've done this kind of work before," he said, not quite a question. "I kept the books for a household in St. Louis. Larger than this, in its way." She didn't look up from the page. "Your father recorded everything twice, once when the order was placed, once when it was delivered. You've only been recording once. That's where half your discrepancies start." Thomas leaned against the doorframe, watching her hands move sure and quick over the columns, and felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with bookkeeping. He'd expected a wife who managed the house. He had not expected to feel, within a single morning, like the lesser expert in his own trade. "Word will get around town you run tighter numbers than my father did," he said. "Let it." She glanced up then, the faintest curve at her mouth. "A ledger that balances is worth more than a reputation for looking the other way." He laughed, short and surprised at himself for it, and went out to the yard to check the steam box before she could see how long the sound of her voice stayed with him. Through the morning, he found reasons to pass by the workbench more often than the work required. A barrel that didn't need checking. A hoop that was already tight. Each time she was still bent over the ledger, unhurried, and each time he told himself it was the numbers he'd come to look at. By midday, she had found the pattern he'd been too close to see. A string of small payments recorded as sundry expense, going back nearly 3 years, never itemized, always in round figures. "Somebody's been drawing money from this business and calling it nothing," she said, tapping the column. "Your father's hand stops appearing here 18 months before he passed. After that, it's yours. But you didn't write these." Thomas frowned and took the ledger from her, studying the entries. His stomach went tight and cold. "That's Silas's hand," he said slowly. "My father's cousin. He came around to help with deliveries after Pa's health turned. Then somebody ought to ask him what sundry expense means. Opal said it plainly, without triumph, though Thomas caught the careful way she watched his face for his reaction, as if she'd learned somewhere that pointing out another man's blindness could cost a person more than it should. "You're not wrong to say it," he told her, and meant it as more than agreement. It was the first time he had looked at her and seen not the terms of a bargain, but a woman he was beginning, cautiously, to trust. He rode out to find Silas that same afternoon, the ledger's suspect pages folded in his coat pocket, though he decided against confronting him outright before he had more than a hunch to stand on. He found his father's cousin at the feed store, easy and talkative as always, and came away from the conversation with nothing more than a vague unease he couldn't yet name as suspicion. It sat uncomfortably in him the whole ride home, the first crack in a trust he hadn't known was fragile until Opal had shown him where to look. She was still at the workbench when he returned, though she'd moved on from the ledgers to inventorying the barrel stock itself, counting staves and matching them against what the books claimed should be on hand. "You went to see him," she said, not looking up. "Didn't ask him anything outright. Wanted to see his face first, I suppose, before I knew what question to put to it." "And?" "And I don't know yet. That's the trouble." Thomas leaned against the doorframe, watching her work, and found himself saying more than he'd planned to. "My father trusted him near as much as he trusted me. If I'm wrong about that, I don't know what else I've been wrong about without noticing." Opal set down her tally stick and looked at him properly then, something gentler than her usual composure crossing her face. "Being shown a thing you missed isn't the same as being a fool for missing it, Thomas. Most people never get the chance to look as closely as I've had to learn to look. It's not a virtue. It's a scar that happened to be useful." He didn't know what to say to that, only nodded, and found that her willingness to name her own carefulness as something hard-earned rather than simply clever made him trust it more, not less. By the time supper was ready that evening, the unease of the afternoon had settled into something steadier. Not certainty yet, but the beginning of a plan. Built the same patient way she built every column that finally balanced. Sunday brought them both to the Larkspur Hollow meeting house, and Thomas felt the weight of every eye on the walk-in, though Opal walked beside him with her attention fixed straight ahead, as if the stairs were simply weather to be walked through. He'd lent her his mother's old straw bonnet against the sun, and she wore it without comment, though he noticed her fingers find the brim once, briefly, like she was deciding whether the gesture had meant something. Loretta Finch caught them before they reached the church steps, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "Well now, Thomas Whitfield sending all the way to St. Louis for a wife. Couldn't find a suitable girl closer to home?" The word suitable landed with a weight that made its meaning plain to everyone within earshot. Thomas felt his jaw tighten, and he opened his mouth to answer sharp. But Opal spoke first, her voice even and unbothered. "Mrs. Finch, I understood Larkspur Hollow needed a bookkeeper as much as a wife. I hope the work will speak plainer than the gossip does." A few of the men nearby chuckled despite themselves, and Loretta's mouth pressed into a thin line before she turned toward the church doors without another word. Thomas watched Opal's face for some sign of what the exchange had cost her, but she gave nothing away, only settled the bonnet a fraction straighter and continued walking. "You didn't need me to answer for you," he said quietly, once they were inside and seated. "No," she agreed, "but you stood there ready to." She said it without looking at him, and Thomas understood it for what it was. Not a rebuke, but an acknowledgement. He found he wanted to keep standing there ready, sermon after sermon, town gathering after town gathering, for as long as she'd let him. After the service, more of the congregation drifted near than he expected. Not all unkind, some merely curious, a few outright welcoming. Reverend Colby shook Opal's hand and thanked her for the careful letters that had arranged the match, and an old farmer named Ezra Pruitt asked, gruffly but sincerely, whether she might look over his own accounts sometime, as his eyes weren't what they used to be for close figures. Walking home, the road quiet again, Thomas found himself matching his stride to hers without deciding to. "Mrs. Finch will find something else to say by Wednesday," he said. "She usually does, I expect." Opal's tone carried the dry patience of someone who had faced worse than a mercantile keeper's tongue. "It costs me nothing to let her talk, so long as it stays talk." Thomas wanted to ask what she meant by that, what worse thing she measured this against. But something in the set of her shoulders told him the question wasn't his to ask yet. Instead, he said only, "It won't stay only talk, not while I'm standing next to you," and was surprised to find he'd meant it as a vow rather than a courtesy. That afternoon, Ezra Pruitt made good on his word and came by with a bundle of receipts tied in string, asking sheepishly if Mrs. Whitfield might spare an hour to look them over. Opal spread them across the kitchen table and worked through them methodically while Ezra hovered near the door, clearly unused to being the one waiting on someone else's judgment. "You've been overpaying your feed supplier by a fair margin," she told him. "He's charging you the wagon rate even on orders you collect yourself." Ezra's face reddened. "Been doing that 3 years then?" "Then it's a good thing you asked now, instead of a 4th year in." Opal said it without unkindness, and something in Ezra's stiff posture eased. He thanked her twice on his way out, and told Thomas, low enough that he probably thought Opal wouldn't hear, that his wife was a sharper hand with figures than any man he'd hired to do the same work in town. Thomas found he liked hearing it said by someone else almost as much as he liked knowing it himself. Later, once Ezra's wagon had rattled off, Opal sat back down at the table, and Thomas noticed the faint line of tiredness at her eyes that she usually kept hidden behind her steady composure. "You don't have to take on the whole county's books," he said. "Ezra could have asked anyone." "He asked me." She said it simply, but there was something underneath it. The plain fact that being asked, being trusted with a neighbor's private accounts after only a few weeks in Larkspur Hollow, meant more to her than she was inclined to say outright. "I'd rather be useful here than merely tolerated, Thomas. It's not the same thing, and I've lived both." He didn't have an answer ready for that, only reached over and refilled her coffee without being asked. A small, unremarkable kindness that she accepted with a look that told him she'd noticed it wasn't nothing. 2 weeks into balancing the cooperage's accounts, Opal found something that made her set down her pen and sit very still. Thomas noticed the stillness before he noticed the page. She was rarely without motion, always tapping a figure, turning a receipt, and the sudden quiet pulled him across the room. "What is it?" She turned the ledger toward him. "Look at the ink." Under the window's plain light, he could see it now that she'd shown him. Certain entries were a shade lighter than the rest. The pen pressed less firm, as though written weeks after the date beside them claimed. "Someone went back into these pages after the fact," she said. "Not your father's hand, not yours." Thomas felt a flare of something between disbelief and offense, not at her, but at the suggestion itself. "Silas has kept the delivery accounts honest as far as I ever checked. I'm not saying what it means yet. I'm saying what I see." Her voice stayed level, but there was a carefulness in it now, as if she were bracing for him to turn the doubt on her instead. It had happened to her before, Thomas would learn later, more than once. A discrepancy found, and the finder blamed instead of thanked. He caught the bracing in her and made himself slow down. "Show me the pages," he said, quieter. They spent the better part of an hour with the ledger between them, Opal walking him through each altered entry, and slowly his offense reshaped itself into something colder and more useful. Not doubt of her, but growing certainty that his own trust in Silas had been resting on nothing sturdier than habit. "I'll ride out and ask him plainly," Thomas said at last. "You may want proof in hand before you do. A man rarely admits to what he thinks can't be shown." Opal was already copying the suspect entries onto a fresh sheet, her handwriting steady even now. The evening settled into an odd, taut quiet between them, not unfriendly, but weighted with the strain of a question neither wanted to say aloud yet. If Silas had been skimming from the cooperage for years, who else in the family, in the town, might have known and said nothing? Thomas found himself watching Opal work by lamplight, struck by how she'd walked into a stranger's disordered life and, within 2 weeks, found the rot no one else had noticed in 3 years. "You didn't have to tell me," he said eventually. "You could have kept quiet and drawn your wage same as before." Opal looked up at that, something flickering behind her steady eyes. "I don't build my place in a house on what I choose not to see, Mr. Whitfield. I've learned that costs more in the end than it saves." She said no more, but Thomas heard the weight sitting behind the words and did not press her for the story yet. He only nodded and reached over to still her restless pen hand for a moment with his own. Brief, rough-palmed, and gone again before either of them could name what the touch had meant. The letter arrived on a Thursday, carried out with the regular mail and bearing a lawyer's red wax seal Thomas didn't recognize. He read it standing at the workbench and felt the floor of his certainty tilt beneath him with every line. The firm of Ashby and Kemp wrote on behalf of Mr. Gerald Kemp, heir to the late Whitcomb estate of St. Louis, regarding a former household employee, one Opal Reeves, whose departure from the estate's service had been, the letter said delicately, under circumstances requiring clarification. It asked that Mr. Whitfield, as her husband, encourage her cooperation in resolving the matter, for her own good standing as much as his. Thomas carried the letter inside and set it on the table without a word, watching Opal's face as she read it. He had expected fear, maybe, or a scramble to explain. What he saw instead was a stillness he was coming to recognize. The same stillness that had come over her the day she found the altered ledger pages, the look of someone doing arithmetic on a danger she'd long ago learned to expect. "Is it true?" he asked, and made himself ask it plain, the way she'd have asked it of him. "Not whether you did something. I mean, is there a reason he'd send this?" "There's a reason." Opal set the letter down carefully, as if it might tear at rough handling. "Gerald Kemp inherited the Whitcomb estate when his uncle died. I kept the household books there for 6 years. In my last months, money went missing from the estate accounts. Not a little, a great deal. Mr. Kemp told the family it was me. I told them where the true entries could be found. He dismissed me before anyone looked closely enough to see he was the one who'd been drawing against accounts that weren't his to touch. And nobody looked. Nobody with reason to look was asked to. I was gone before the question could be raised twice." She met his eyes then, steady despite the strain beneath it. "I kept my own record of every account I managed there. I have kept it since in case the question ever followed me. I did not think it would follow me this far." Thomas sat with that a long moment, turning the shape of it over the way he'd turn a stave to check for warp. He thought of the Cooperage's own altered pages, Silas's careful, light-inked corrections, and felt something click into place that had nothing to do with St. Louis, and everything to do with how easily a careful man could be robbed by someone he trusted not to look too closely. "Did anyone in St. Louis ever ask to see your own record?" he said finally. "The one you kept?" "No one asked. I offered it twice. The first time, Mr. Kemp's uncle was already too ill to review it. The second time, Kemp himself told the remaining family it wasn't a servant's place to produce evidence against her employer, only to answer for herself." Opal's voice held steady through the telling, though Thomas heard the old unfairness of it sitting just beneath the words. "There's a particular kind of quiet that falls over a room when a colored woman offers proof nobody wants to look at. I expect you've never had cause to hear it." "No," Thomas admitted. "I haven't." He didn't offer an apology for that, sensing she wouldn't want one. Only the plain admission of a thing he hadn't known to notice before. "You'll get a different kind of quiet in this house. I'll look at whatever you put in front of me, every time." Opal studied him for a moment, as if weighing whether the promise was worth the same as her own careful ones. "I'll hold you to that, Mr. Whitfield." "Thomas," he said, "seems foolish to keep formal with someone who's just found me out for a fool in my own ledgers." That drew something close to a real smile from her, quick and unguarded before she caught it back. "Thomas, then," she allowed, and went back to the page, though the air between them had loosened somewhere in the last hour, settling into something neither business nor courtesy alone. "You could have told me this the day you stepped off that stage," he said, not as an accusation. "I could have. I chose instead to let you see what kind of bookkeeper I was before you had to decide what kind of woman I was." Her voice didn't waver, though something in it asked, quietly, whether the order of those two things would matter to him now. Thomas reached across the table and set his hand over hers, not gripping, just resting there, solid. "It doesn't change what I've seen these 3 weeks, he said. "It only tells me why you keep 2 ledgers instead of 1. Opal's breath went out slow, and for the first time since the letter arrived, her shoulders eased. That night, once the supper dishes were cleared, Opal brought out the oilcloth-wrapped notebook she'd carried off the stage months before and had kept, Thomas realized now, close by her ever since. She untied the cord with steady fingers and laid it open on the table between them. "This is every account I managed at the Whitcomb estate," she said. "Purchases, wages, repairs, down to the penny in my hand, dated the day each transaction happened, not after." She turned to the final pages, where the handwriting grew smaller, tighter, the ink pressed harder into the paper. "And this is the night I was told to leave. I wrote down everything I could recall of what Kemp had drawn against the estate in the 6 months prior, from memory, before anyone could stop me writing it." Thomas drew the lamp closer and bent over the pages beside her, and for the next several hours they worked as they had on the Cooperage's own ledger, comparing dates, cross-checking figures, Opal explaining the household's accounts the way she might have taught a new clerk, patient even now. He found himself less struck by the numbers than by her, the discipline it must have taken to carry proof of her own innocence for years, never certain it would be needed, never letting it go all the same. "You kept this even after you thought you were safe here," he said. "I don't know that safety is a thing I get to assume anymore, Mr. Whitfield." She said it without self-pity. A simple fact stated the way she stated any figure. I've learned that a woman like me is safer holding her own proof than trusting that good character will be believed without it. Thomas was quiet at that, turning the truth of it over, uncomfortable with how much of it he recognized as true and had never had cause to notice before. He reached over and, without quite deciding to, set his hand on her shoulder, letting it rest there while she finished copying a final column of figures onto a clean page for the lawyer's benefit. She didn't shrug away from it, and after a moment her own hand came up and rested briefly over his, an answer more than a request. "We'll answer Kemp's letter together," Thomas said. "Not just your word against his, mine standing behind it, and this ledger besides." "He has money for lawyers I don't have," Opal said. But there was less resignation in it now than there had been over supper. "Then we'll need Larkspur Hollow behind us too, not just a ledger." Thomas said it slowly, thinking it through even as he spoke. "Loretta Finch has watched you 3 weeks running and hasn't caught you in a single careless word. Reverend Colby's shaken your hand in front of the whole congregation. That's worth something, even against a lawyer's seal." Opal looked at him for a long moment, something unguarded crossing her face for the first time since the letter arrived. "You didn't have to make my fight yours," she said quietly. "I married you 3 weeks ago," Thomas said. "Seems to me it already was." They stayed up past midnight drafting the reply to Ashby and Kemp, Thomas writing in his own plain hand, while Opal dictated the particulars, correcting his phrasing twice where she thought it too soft. "Don't apologize for the years I was silent," she told him, when he'd written a line explaining her long delay in answering the claim. "Say it plain. I answer now because I can prove it now, not because I owe anyone an excuse for when I couldn't." He struck the line and rewrote it the way she wanted, and found he preferred her version too, once he'd heard the reasoning behind it. When the letter was finally sealed and set aside for the morning post, Opal sat back in her chair, looking spent in a way she rarely let herself appear. "You should sleep," Thomas said. "I will. I wanted to see it finished first." She looked at the sealed letter a moment longer, then at him. 4 years I've carried this alone, Thomas. I don't know yet how to carry it any other way." "You don't have to know how tonight," he said. "Just let it be true a while and the knowing will follow." It was, he thought afterward, the closest he'd come yet to saying outright what he'd started to feel for hers, though neither of them named it that night. She only nodded and let him walk her to the stairs with a handlight at her back, and for once did not step away from it before she reached the top. Gerald Kemp did not send a second letter. He came himself, arriving in a hired carriage that looked wrong on the rutted Larkspur Hollow road, his boots polished enough to catch the last of the daylight, when he stepped down at the Whitfield gate just as supper was being laid. Thomas met him at the door before he could knock. "Mr. Whitfield." Kemp's voice carried the smoothness of a man used to being deferred to. "I'd hoped we might resolve this without the inconvenience of travel, but your wife's silence left me little choice." He held out a folded paper, official and stiff, a county court summons requiring Opal Reeves to appear and answer for the disappearance of estate funds during her employment. Thomas took it without hurry, unfolded it, read it through once before he let his eyes come back up to Kemp's face. "You're welcome to sit to supper, since you've come this far," he said, his tone giving away nothing. "We'll talk after." It was a strange meal, the 4 settings at the table holding only 3 people who spoke, and one Kemp, who watched Opal with a careful, assessing patience that made Thomas's jaw tighten more than any outright hostility could have. Opal herself ate little, but she held herself as steady as she had the day she stepped off the stage, and when Kemp finally set down his fork and turned the conversation toward the matter at hand, she met his eyes without flinching. "You've had 4 years to bring this claim, Mr. Kemp," she said. "You bring it now, after I've married and settled, not before." "I bring it now because you can be found now," Kemp said, an edge slipping beneath the smoothness. "You vanished rather neatly once before. I left because you told the family I stole from them, and no one asked to see the books before believing you." Opal's voice didn't rise, though Thomas felt the room's temperature drop all the same. "I have those books, Mr. Kemp. Every page in my own hand, dated the day it happened. I expect the county judge will find that more convincing than a summons filed 4 years late." Something flickered across Kemp's face. Not quite alarm, but the first crack in his composure since he'd arrived. "We'll let the court decide what's convincing," he said, recovering smoothly, and rose from the table without finishing his meal. At the door he paused, looking back at Thomas rather than Opal. "You married into more trouble than you know, Whitfield. I'd think on that, if I were you." Thomas walked him out to the carriage himself and said only, "I've thought on it. I'll see you at the courthouse." He watched the carriage roll off into the dark before he went back inside, where he found Opal still seated at the table, her hands folded tight together, though her face had gone carefully blank. "He'll bring lawyers," she said. "We'll bring the truth, and half the county who's watched you keep an honest ledger for a month running." Thomas sat back down across from her. "That's not nothing, Opal." It was the first time he'd used her given name without the Miss or Mrs. attached, and he saw her notice it, saw something in her ease just slightly, even with the summons still lying folded on the table between them. Word of Kemp's visit had already reached the Mercantile by the next morning, the way word always did in Larkspur Hollow, and Thomas found himself fielding questions from customers who came to collect barrels and stayed to ask about the stranger in the fine carriage. He answered plainly each time, a false claim from years back, his wife's own record ready to answer it, a court date already set. He watched, with some satisfaction, how the plain telling of it did more to steady the town's opinion than any defense he might have made. Loretta Finch herself stopped by 2 days later, ostensibly for a barrel of nails, and lingered at the counter longer than the errand required. That man had the look of someone used to being believed simply for asking twice, she said, addressing Opal directly for the first time since the church steps. "I don't care for that look on a man, Mrs. Whitfield. Never have." "Nor do I, Mrs. Finch," Opal said, and something passed between the two women that wasn't quite friendship yet, but had stopped being suspicion. That evening, once the shop had emptied, Thomas found Opal going back through her St. Louis ledger one more time, checking each entry against her memory, as though she might have missed something in 4 years of carrying it. He sat across from her without a word, simply present, the way she'd sat with him over the Cooperative's tangled books weeks before. "You don't have to check it again," he said gently. "You've checked it a dozen times since the letter came." "I know." She didn't stop turning the pages. "I suppose I'd rather be tired from checking than caught unprepared." Thomas reached over and closed the ledger softly beneath her hands, not taking it from her, only stilling it. "Then be tired tomorrow," he said. "Tonight, just sit a while." She looked at him, something worn and grateful in her expression, and for once let the ledger stay closed. The Boone County Courthouse filled beyond its benches the morning of the hearing, word having traveled Larkspur Hollow the way word always did. Thomas sat beside Opal at the front, her oilcloth ledger and the Cooperage's own corrected books stacked before them, and he was aware of the weight of eyes behind them, the same way he'd been aware of it outside the church months before. Except this time, he thought, watching the room settle. The weight felt different. Less like judgment waiting to fall. More like a town deciding which way to lean. Judge Elias Corbett, a spare man with iron-rimmed spectacles, opened the proceedings without ceremony and let Kemp's lawyer, a Mr. Pruitt, no relation to Ezra, present the claim first. Funds missing from the Whitcomb estate. The household bookkeeper vanished before the discrepancy could be resolved. A debt of character as well as money still owed. Kemp sat through it with his hands folded, composed again, the crack from supper night nowhere in evidence. When it came her turn, Opal rose and laid her ledger open before the judge herself, walking him through each entry the same unhurried way she'd walked Thomas through the Cooperage's tangled books. Dates, figures, the household's own receipts matched line for line against her record. She showed him the final pages, written the night she was dismissed, ink pressed hard into papers by a hand that had been shaking with more than cold. I wrote this because I knew a woman's word would not be weighed the same as Mr. Kemp's, she told the judge plainly. I did not know if I would ever need it. I kept it because I could not afford to hope I wouldn't. The judge studied the pages a long while, in a silence so complete Thomas could hear the courthouse clock keeping time at the back of the room. Then, unexpectedly, Loretta Finch rose from the gallery, asking to be heard. Thomas felt Opal go still beside him, bracing, he understood now, for one more voice to turn against her. I've watched this woman keep the Whitfield Cooperage books plain and honest for going on 2 months, Loretta said, her voice carrying none of its old sharpness. I've had no love lost for her manner, if I'm honest, finding it forward for a woman new to town. But forward isn't the same as false, and I've seen nothing false in her since she arrived. I'll say that before this court, if it's worth saying. It was not warmth, Thomas thought, watching Loretta sit back down. But it was truth, offered plainly, and in its own way it was worth more. Judge Corbett removed his spectacles, cleaned them with unhurried care, and set them back on his nose before he spoke. A summons filed 4 years after the alleged offense, against a defendant now proven to have kept meticulous record from the very night in question, does not persuade this court, he said. I find the claim against Mrs. Whitfield unsupported. Mr. Kemp, I'd advise you consider carefully before bringing it again in any county. He struck his gavel once, and the sound seemed to loosen something in Opal's shoulders that had been wound tight for 4 years. Kemp left without a word to either of them, his lawyer trailing after with the summons still in hand, and the gallery broke into a low murmur that was, Thomas realized, almost entirely sympathetic. Under the table his hand found Opal's and held it, and for once she let it stay there, gripping back just as firm. Outside on the courthouse steps, neighbors lingered to offer their congratulations, and even a few who'd never spoken to Opal directly before found reason to shake her hand or nod their approval her way. Ezra Pruitt pressed through the small crowd to tell her, gruffly, that he'd bring his brother-in-law's accounts by next week if she'd have the patience for them, and Opal accepted with a graciousness that Thomas noted had lost none of its careful reserve, even now. It was only once they were alone in the wagon, the courthouse and its crowd behind them, that Opal let the day's weight show plainly on her face. Her hands, steady through the entire hearing, trembled now against her knees, and Thomas reached over without a word and covered them with his own. 4 years, she said quietly, staring at the road ahead rather than at him. 4 years I've told myself I'd need that ledger someday, and never quite believed the day would come where it would be enough. It was enough, Thomas said. More than enough. Corbett didn't need to think twice. He didn't. She let out a breath that seemed to carry some of the old weight out with it. I don't know what to do with a day like this one, Thomas. I've spent so long expecting the next accusation that I never planned for what comes after it's answered. Same as any other day, I expect, Thomas said, and felt her hand turn beneath his to hold on properly for the first time. Just one where you don't have to carry quite so much of it alone. She didn't answer in words, only leaned briefly into his shoulder as the wagon carried them home. And Thomas thought that of everything the day had settled, that small, unguarded weight against him was the thing he'd remember longest. By harvest, the cooperage carried a new sign above its door. Whitfield and Reeves, painted by Thomas's own hand, though Opal had corrected the spacing of the letters twice before she'd let him nail it up. The books balanced now, every column checked twice the way her habit had taught his, and Silas had been let go quietly back in the spring once the pattern of light ink and round figures had been laid plainly before him. The old ledger still sat on its shelf above the workbench, but its pages had changed. Thomas's father's small, certain hand still opened the earliest years, and Thomas's own uneven scrawl still ran through the years after. But newer pages now carried a third hand alongside his, even and unhurried, filling in beside his where his figures wandered, the two styles sitting together on the same lines, the way two people might share a single bench built for one. Opal had taken to sitting on the cooperage steps in the evening, once the day's accounts were closed, and Thomas found himself doing the same more often than not. The two of them saying little, needing to say little. It was an ordinary morning, not a dramatic one, when he came out to find her there going over the harvest orders, and he sat down beside her without a word and watched her work the way he had that very first morning, still struck, months later, by the sureness of her hands. Loretta Finch asked yesterday if I'd look over the mercantile's accounts, Opal said, not looking up. Said she supposed I'd charge her a fair rate, seeing as we were neighbors now. That's as close to an apology as she'll ever get you, Thomas said, and Opal's mouth curved, the closest thing to a laugh she allowed herself most mornings. He watched her a moment longer, the ledger balanced on her knee, the oilcloth notebook that had once held her only proof of innocence now tucked away in a drawer rather than carried against her side. She had stopped bracing, he realized. Somewhere between the courthouse and this ordinary morning, she had let herself stop bracing. Silas had come by once, back in the spring, hat in hand, to ask if there was work he might still do for the family, even after the ledger's truth had come out plain. Thomas had turned him away without much anger left in it by then, more tired than bitter, and Opal had said afterward that she thought he'd handled it fairer than most men would have in his place. You could have run him off the property with a shotgun, and no one in this county would have blamed you, she said. Wouldn't have balanced the books any better, Thomas had answered, and she'd laughed at that, truly laughed. The sound of it still one of his favorite things months later. Now, on the steps, he watched her turn a page of the harvest orders and thought of that spring conversation, of the whole slow unfolding season between the courthouse and this ordinary morning. Loretta Finch's accounts handed over each month without complaint. Ezra's brother-in-law's tangled ledger sorted inside a week. The sign above the door repainted once already, because Opal had insisted the first coat had run in the rain. None of it had been dramatic. All of it had been true. "I didn't marry you for this," he said finally, nodding at the sign above the door, the ledger, the whole ordinary shape of the life they'd built. "I wrote that letter wanting someone who could keep my books straight and ask for nothing more than a fair arrangement." "I remember the letter," Opal said. "Not a word of love in it." "No." Thomas reached over and closed the ledger gently on her knee, setting it aside. "I didn't know the word yet, when I wrote it. I know it now." He said it plainly, the same way she'd have said it. No more dressed up than a column of figures that finally balanced. Opal looked at him a long moment, something steady and sure settling over her face, and when he leaned in and kissed her, it wasn't in a storm, wasn't at a courthouse door with the whole county watching. It was an ordinary morning at the start of harvest, and that, they would both come to think, made it the truer thing.
Opal came to Blacksburg's Hollow carrying Ruth of her own wall, because the world had taught her she needed, and Thomas Whitfield learned, slower than he would like to admit, that a marriage built on bland honesty could grow into something neither of them had thought to ask for. The story was never about a storm sweeping two strangers together. It was about two people choosing, morning after ordinary morning, to trust each other a little further than the day before. We would love to know, where are you watching today? Drop your city and stay in the comment below. We read everyone. And if Oban and Thomas story stay with you, give this video a like and subscribe for more. There's another story waiting just down the road, and we'll be glad to help you along with it.